Once more unto the breach, dear friends, once more, or close the wall up with our Mormonism live. Yes, it is I, Radio Free Mormon, together with my faithful sidekick, Bill Reel. How are you doing?
I am doing so good, RFM. How about you?
I'm doing great, obviously.
Excellent.
I'm soliloquizing all over myself.
Excellent.
Making quite a mess, too, I must say. It's October 22nd, 2025. Are you getting in the Halloween spirit finally?
I've got my costume. It showed up. I'm ready to rock and roll. Last night we had
It is a DJ costume.
What's that?
It's a DJ costume. You're just going to wear what you always wear.
No, it will be different. And then last night, just a little note, last night we had our first spiritual trauma support group, a full group of 15 people. We've actually now a waiting list for group number 2. And we're off and running with that. It went really well. And now here.
Tell us who was there and what the most embarrassing stories they told were.
I will. I'll name all the people, tell you what their last name is, and give you their traumatizing inner wounded child and explain to you what's happened to them.
Fantastic. That's all I want to know.
I'm sure
they'll. I'm kidding, of course.
Me too.
Even I wouldn't expect Bill to do that.
No, and I would never do it, even if you did expect me to.
I've got my Man Thing t-shirt on. That's pretty exciting.
The Man Thing.
Mm-hmm.
I guess all the good names. I guess all the good names were taken.
This is before the Animal Men.
Okay.
Man Thing. He's the Marvel response to DC's Swamp Thing. It's similar, but different. I think Swamp Thing could actually talk. And you got to carry Adriana Barbeau around the swamp. I never saw that movie.
Yo, Adriana. Yeah.
Yo, Adrian. I did it. You know, I feel like a bum. You know what I mean? Okay. But enough of me. Tell me what you think about me. We've got a great show tonight. And by the way, you know what tomorrow is, Bill? It's something about me. That's a hint. Tomorrow is October 23rd, 2025. It is the 9th anniversary of the very first Radio Free Mormon podcast.
Look at that. Now that is something that's incredible.
Hadn't I told you about this? Is this okay? That was that a stage surprise? That was amazing. And I thought maybe we should have something special tomorrow night and everybody could call in and say which of the episodes of mine they love the most, you know. But I thought, we'll wait for number 10. If I'm still around for number 10, we'll do that then.
Did you not hear the applause when I pushed the button?
No, I heard no applause.
Did anybody else out there hear the applause? I'd love to know in the comments.
Anyone?
If not, I thought I fixed my Rodecaster, but obviously I've got a secondary problem now. So
yes.
Anyway.
Oh, by the way, and here's extra credit for those in the live chat. If you can correctly give me the first name of the Man Thing, or rather the person he was before that fateful night and the car crash into the Floridian swamp. First name. Who can do that? Okay, so but we have Lee Krahenbuhl with us tonight. I'm sorry, Lee Krakatoa, east of Java. No, wait. It is Lee Krahenbuhl. He's a man of many faces.
Good evening. Good evening, Man Thing. You make my heart sing. You make everything.
Do you know the Man Thing?
I do not.
Okay. No.
I do not, but I learn so many things when I come on.
Yes, some of them useful. But you know, I went back to find the last time you were on our show. This is Lee Krahenbuhl coming back for a return visit to Mormonism Live. He did such a great job talking about the Ouija board baptisms. The last time we were here, this little known and completely unknown to me, and I think to most members of the audience, those Ouija board baptisms and the acting troupe and making their way from Los Angeles up to Salt Lake City, guided by nothing but a modern day Liahona, and then getting baptized by Brigham Young, I believe, and then setting up the theater and managing the theater and doing all these things at the theater in Salt Lake City.
That's true.
And I went back and I listened to that. I thought that was just fascinating. I looked at the live chat. Everybody loved you.
Oh, shucks.
So Lee is going to talk to us some more about some more research he's been doing tonight. The best part, I think, is about spirituality. And by that, I mean spiritualism. I mean, it's in the phenomenon of spiritualism that started in 1848 in New York, Hydesville to be exact, with the Fox sisters, spread out from there like wildfire. And apparently there were some members of the church who were involved in it. And hey, Bill, do you remember when that lady called in to Mormonism After Dark? It might have been the first show. I have no idea who she was, but she said she was Joseph Smith. Do you remember that?
Yes, there was a feminine
Really?
voice that notified us that it was Joseph Smith, and it was quite the interesting conversation. Maybe the strangest call into the show that we've had yet.
Yes. So I just
Wow.
wanted to let you know that, Lee, that
Yes.
this isn't our first encounter with a woman claiming to channel the spirit voice of Joseph Smith.
Well, if it was the first, I mean that's actual confirmation that there's something going on.
Absolutely.
Must be.
Two crazy people make everybody sane.
Very true. Yeah. Well, if you recall at the end of episode 136, the Ouija board baptisms,
Yes.
I said, and that's not even the most interesting part of the story.
Yes, you did say that. You teased us. And you teased me so bad, I waited over 2 years to have you back on to hear the rest
Here
of
we
the story.
go. Okay. Buckle in. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm going to share. Let's see. My screen is down here. Do you see the screen? Do I need to do something else?
There it
There
is.
we are. Haha.
Where's the screen?
Okay. Our title tonight is Brigham Young, Matchmaker to the Stars. And by stars, of course, we don't have stars of screen or radio. So all of the stars that fell from the firmament need to be on the stage. And as we recall, Brigham Young's Salt Lake Theater in 1862 was the grandest theater venue west of the Mississippi when it was built that December. And 9 years later, in 1871, here come the Carters.
Mhm.
And just to let you know, by way of some background. So, by way of prelude to our subject this evening, we're gonna look at two dates in 1857 that showcase the way in which Brigham Young used his vast social control of marriage. And both of these instances happened within a few weeks of each other. First, on January 31st of this year, he walked into the church historian's office in Salt Lake City, and he told officials that he wanted very little information about his family included in the history of the church. That is, he didn't want any mention in the official history of the church of his dozens of marriages, very little about the children that issued from them. And when juxtaposed with the other date, I find these two quotes kind of quirky, to say the least, and ironic given my own discoveries about my family history when I was well into my career as a theater historian. Because 5 weeks after dictating the gray out of the historical record um, regarding his own marriages, Brigham Young performed the ceremony that united my own third great grandfather with his only plural wife, a marriage that was forced on him by Young, which neither my ancestor nor his first wife wanted. The plural marriage explosively divided his first family, with whom he never again lived. It sent patterns of destruction and bitterness radiating through 4 generations of my family into the present day. In other words, Brigham Young wanted his own family out of the limelight, but whatever happened to or within other families as the result of his wielding power over their own domestic lives did not fall within that kind of protection. However, try as he might, Brigham could not control all information in all centuries, and that's where our story begins today. And here is an extremely salient quote from our own RFM, who said in the episode commemorating 50 years of Sunstone, a lot of stuff is out there and it's just waiting to be dug up. There is treasure that actually can be found on these treasure digs, which I found tremendously helpful for our subject today.
What a pleasant thing it is to hear myself quoted in a podcast.
Yes. Would you like to hear yourself quoted in the voice of Christopher Walken?
Well, sure. Do you want to do it or Bill?
We can do dueling if you want to.
Yeah. First you,
Okay.
Lee,
I'll
but
start.
we'll have a competition here.
Okay. A lot of stuff is out there, and it's just waiting to be dug up. There is treasure that actually can be found on these treasure digs. Okay, Bill, you go.
Now, a lot of stuff is out there and it's waiting to be dug up. There's a treasure that actually can be found on these treasure digs.
Oh, Mr. Real wins, hands down. That's wonderful.
You were
Okay.
both great.
Well, okay. Well, thank
You
you.
were great too, Lee. It was fun. I think
You're
the
both my
audience
favorite.
won. The audience won, not
I think the audience won tonight. And so we'll spend the rest of our time tonight digging up some of that treasure. For example, in the online archives of the Church History Catalog of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we find this scanned image of a manila folder. And inside that folder is a document identified as manuscript D3696. And the document is a letter that's been misidentified for 154 years last August. The letter's description reads as follows: M.A. Walker, letter, DeKalb, Illinois, to Jared Carter, Salt Lake City, Utah. Description: condemns Brigham Young and plural marriage, and includes communications received by a medium in 1857. Actually, in the letter, it says 1867, but as we're going to find out, the letter's a little hard to read, and RFM, I think you can attest to that.
Oh yeah, is that the misidentification you're talking about? The year?
Well, no, there's a lot more to it than that. Just you see the call number there. You see that it's open to research. On the do we have the you see? Let's see. Up there above at the top of the slide, you can see the URL that takes you directly to this document, and I'm hoping that it's also on the landing page for this episode, so that people can go and see this themselves.
And they can make themselves unwell trying to read this.
Exactly. So it's the physical description is a manuscript. It's one folder, 4 pages. The microfilm is 1 reel. It's not a bill reel, but it is a microfilm reel. The subjects are spiritualism and Young, Brigham, 1801 to 1877. So you can go and check that out for yourself. This is what it looks like. And I've been in touch with the good folk of the LDS Church History Catalog to let them know that there's way more specific and more accurate information to be had about this document, and that it should be reclassified or at least redescribed. And after some 5 years of waiting for the change to be made, I'm beginning to take the hint that the catalogers have not the slightest interest in correcting the description. So we all are hearing it here first on Mormonism Live.
Can I jump in for just a second here, Lee, and say that this M.A. Walker is a lady. She has a very nice hand as penmanship goes.
Yes.
The problem is that you see 4 pages here. There's actually only 2 leaves in this letter, and it's written front and back on each one.
Yeah.
And in such tiny, precise writing, unfortunately, on the other side, you can see the other side through, right?
Yeah, there are actually 4 leaves, making 8 in all.
I only saw 2 in that link.
Back. Oh,
there are
2
only
in that
2
link?
in that link. I would swear to it, but maybe I'm wrong.
Okay. Well, we'll take a look at that. I've forwarded you the transcription,
right?
And we can look at that a little later.
Okay. Well, never mind. Anyway,
sure.
all I'm saying is this letter is just incredibly dense in writing, but very difficult to read because it's written on both sides.
Absolutely.
If it hadn't been written on both sides, I think it would not be difficult at all.
That could very well be. I think that this seems to me to have bled through whatever the paper is made of, and I would imagine that if it's still extant in physical form, that it's pretty well illegible by now. What you're seeing on the slide there is all of the contrast and the brightness just pushed right to the brink. It's actually a very dark document in more ways than one. But the reason that I believe it's so important to correct the description of this document and to hear the letter's contents is that it is the key to a wealth of significant information, not only about the early theater in Salt Lake City, but also about the interaction of LDS Orthodox theology with the spiritualist movement that directly opposed Brigham Young's authority in the early 1870s. And how Young's authority was so absolute that he exercised his power to arrange and rearrange marriages at will, and both created and destroyed domestic lives in the process. Now, this letter is addressed to Jared W. Carter Jr., 1838 to 1874, whom we met way back in episode 136, the Ouija board baptisms. Carter was the manager and lead actor of a theatrical troupe called Carter's Dramatic Combination. And that is the performing company that traversed the desert from Los Angeles to Salt Lake City in the late spring of 1871. They were acting under the direction of what they believed, at least two of them, believed to be otherworldly spirit guides, who instructed them to make the journey from April through June of 1871 in order to be baptized by Brigham Young. So let's reacquaint ourselves with the cast of characters. The principal actors in our story are Jared Watrous Carter Jr. If the name sounds familiar to members of our audience who have a knowledge of LDS history, he was indeed the son of that Jared Carter Sr., a Joseph Smith associate who was mentioned many times by name in the Doctrine and Covenants and reputed to have been one of the creators of the vigilante band known as the Danites. We also have Carter's wife, actress Carrie Cogswell Carter. Carrie's younger brother, comic actor William Jenkins Cogswell, W.J. Cogswell, or Bill as he was known, and supporting player Edward B. Marden. Now, the Carters believed that they were being spoken to by beings from the spirit world through the use of a spiritualist device popular in the 19th century called a planchette. It's there in the lower right-hand corner of the slide. It's a little board on wheels with a pencil stuck through it, placed on a large piece of paper. Two people facing each other across a table would place their fingertips on the device, and if there were spirits that wished to contact them, the planchette would allegedly move by itself, the pencil lead would meet the paper, and the device would write out messages. So in episode 136, I explained that actor Bill Cogswell in the upper right corner here claimed to have found the planchette in the lobby of a railroad hotel in Nevada in the early days of a tour of the Western states and territories. And he and his sister, Carrie, tried to use it as a pastime, but didn't work. And Cogswell then suggested to his sister that they call his very close friend and fellow company member, Ed Marden, into the room to take his place across the table from her and see if the results were different. And wow, were they ever different. All of a sudden, the planchette began to write messages. Very, very, very specific messages. And these messages convinced Carrie and Jared Carter that they were indeed being directed by spirit guides who proceeded for the next few months to give them daily directions about what they should do next on their tour. Now,
given the fact that they went from LA to Salt Lake City, do you think this indicates that the guys were in on it and Carrie was a holdout and this was an elaborate ploy to get her on board?
I think that was true of I think Carrie was a believer in this. I also think that Jared Carter thought that something was going on and he was being spoken to by members, by spiritual voices.
Right. And I'm not focusing so much on who was a believer, but as to who didn't want to go to Salt Lake City until they were told to by a spirit.
This is what we know to be true. What we know to be true is that the entire company had already been in Ogden. They had in fact established residency in Ogden, and the reason that they had done that is that Carey already had 2 children with the actor Tom Line. Thomas A. Line had introduced professional theater to the Saints at Nauvoo. And from Nauvoo, after the assassination, Tom Line became an acolyte of Sidney Rigdon. That didn't go too well. Then he became a Strangite. That went even worse. And he completely swore off being a member of the Latter-day Saints for about 10 years. Then he married Carey Cogswell. And he and Carey went to Denver, where they shared the stage with a young actor named J.W. Carter. Do you see where this is going?
No place good, because her name up here on the screen is Carey Carter.
Yes. Well, what happened was that Carey was 24 years younger than Line at the time. And she claimed to be even younger than that, because she claimed to, for the rest of her life from this point on, she claimed to be 4 years younger than she actually was, which gave no little glee and grief to Tom Line's detractors and grief to Tom Line, because he was accused of having married a 16-year-old when in fact she was 20. Kind of a difference there. Nothing like we're talking about marrying 13 and 14-year-olds and in other parts of the story that we've shared. But J.W. Carter, Jared Carter, married Carey. She left Line for Jared Carter, and they rode off into the sunset. And the challenge was that they had 2 children, Walter and Mary. And in the divorce, the custody of Walter was awarded to Line, and custody of Mary was awarded to Carey. But she apparently convinced Line that she needed to keep both of the children together. And to make a very long story very short, they all ended up, because Line came to be the tutor of the company in Salt Lake City, the elocutionist and one of the lead tragedians when the theater opened in 1862 and 1863, which is when the divorce happened. Carey and Jared started touring the company because the railroad was just about to come through, and the more railroad that was built, the more territory they could cover. And eventually they toured the Northwest, and they came down through Idaho and decided that since Carey needed to share legal custody of the children with Tom Line, who was in Salt Lake City, they would settle in Ogden. This drove Line absolutely insane because he wanted custody of his children, and he wanted full custody of his children. So they had already been in Ogden, and they were also looking to play the Salt Lake Theater, much to the chagrin of Tom Line.
Which is why Carey Carter wouldn't want to go there from Los Angeles. Checkmate.
She wanted to go there because she wanted to work at the Salt Lake Theater. By 1869, when all of this stuff was happening, Tom Line had fallen out of favor with Brigham Young, way out of favor, to the point where Brigham Young would no longer allow Line to work in the Salt Lake Theater. And the Carters saw their opportunity. And so what happened was they came down in January of 1871, and they stole Walter and took him on tour. And apparently Mary had been sent away to a boarding school of some kind. So we know this because there are multiple accounts of Tom Line complaining to anyone who would listen in Salt Lake City that the Carters had stolen his children. So they go on this tour, and the parents of Walter and little Lincoln Carter, whom they had together.
I know what day he was born.
You you
April
exact
15th, 1865.
That's absolutely true. Lincoln J. Carter became the most successful and the most famous of them all. We recall from episode 136. He became the richest and the most prosperous producer of melodramas and designer of theatrical special effects in history, before film came along and did everything way better. And when Jared Carter got his start, guess what theater he started in?
Ford's?
No.
Oh, the Mason Hall, the Nauvoo. Am I getting this confused with Thomas
1860.
Line?
Yes, 1865.
Okay, well, you go ahead.
Lincoln J. Carter was born the day of Abraham Lincoln's death.
Yes.
There was a family joke that he related that his mother, Carrie, told him, "When you were born, the entire nation grieved." So they
That's funny.
decided, yeah, it's fun. That they decided to name him Lincoln because actors were not popular at that point. So they had this child named Lincoln. They also had Walter in the company, and with their names will come up a little later on. So the planchette thing happens. They go through, and Walter and Lincoln, by the way, are with them on this journey through the desert.
Oh, the two little ones?
The two little ones, that's right. Walter Line became a prosperous merchant in Salt Lake City. City Pillar died a very, very rich man. The Walter Line residence still stands in Salt Lake City, and he died in 1938. Lincoln J. Carter died horrifically young. To me, in his 60s. Of the same kind of heart attack that his father had died of. He remembered a lot of what had happened, even though he was only 5 and 6 years old. He turned 6 years old on the journey. So all of this is just to say that he knew, because he knew his father, who died when he was 9, but he knew him well enough to have conversed with him about the desert journey. And he knew that both his mother and his father had believed everything. What he didn't talk about was his Uncle Bill, but that's another thing. I believe that Bill Cogswell and Ed Martin, who were remembered in one unrelated interview 20 years later, 1892, as, quote, chums and confidential friends, end quote. I believe they were playing a parlor trick on the Carters to see how far they could string their fellow actors along. I see no reason that this practical joke would have been malevolent at first, because Cogswell went out of his way for the rest of his life, and especially in the affidavit that we heard about in episode 136, to describe his friendship with and admiration of his brother-in-law, Jared Carter, and his sister Carrie. But as the prank wore on for days, and the days turned into weeks, and Jared and Carrie Carter were drawn further and further down the rabbit hole, there really was no turning back. There was too much money, too much time, too much trust and relationship had been invested in the ruse. And Cogswell and Martin could not find a way to stop these messages and confess their trick without incurring the Carters' understandable anger, which almost certainly would have destroyed the company, along with losing their relationship with its two stars, who were family to Cogswell. And RFM and Mr. Real, you might recall at the conclusion of 136, I said, as I said at the top of the hour here, that's not even the most interesting part of the story. Well, buckle in, here it comes.
I want to hear that, but I do want to ask you this question. In 1871,
yeah,
is Line, Lyne, what was
correct.
his first name again?
Thomas.
Thomas Line,
Or
inventor
TA.
of the line dance. by the way.
Yeah.
Was he still in Ogden? He'd moved
Uh,
on.
no, Line was in Salt Lake City.
You
He
see,
never
that's why Carrie can't go there.
he never lived
That's
in
why
Ogden.
Jerry can't go there. They've got his kid. They stole him. This is what has to be overcome in order to get them to Salt Lake City.
It happened. They went, they wanted to go there. They went there. They believed that spirit voices were telling them to go there. And the the fascinating thing about it is that Brigham Young accepted them. He was flabbergasted by it, but he said, "Hey, if spirit voices are telling you to come and be baptized uh, in among the Latter-day Saints and to accept our doctrines, uh, more power to you." Now, let's remember one thing that is really in none of the histories, and that is that Jared Carter had grown up as a Latter-day Saint. That is nowhere in the affidavit that Bill Cogswell wrote. Everything is miraculous. You know, he is Jared Carter is convinced immediately, and so is Carrie. But he had grown up in the LDS, and then his father, having been cast out of the LDS, moved to DeKalb, Illinois, and he joined an RLDS congregation, and that's going to be important
And that's where
in
MA is from, right?
in just a few minutes. That is where MA is from. So when we start reading the letter, a lot of things are going to fall into place, and a lot of the interior evidence of the letter is going to make all of this plain. And you might well ask how I can be so certain that Marden and Cogswell were the culprits in some kind of spiritualist hornswoggle of the Carters. Well, for one thing, as we will see later, both were demonstrably untrustworthy. Cogswell was a fabulator. He was an opportunist who just made stuff up to his advantage as any situation warranted. Marden, for his part, was just flat out a pathological liar. And let me draw attention to a treasure I dug up only this past summer that cements the conviction for me that Marden and Cogswell were playing theatrical tricks. And RFM, let's see what you think of this.
Yes.
It's a news notice from the Omaha Herald from 1876, 5 years after the desert journey, which describes what Ed Marden was doing immediately after he had left Salt Lake City for the last time. Let me read the item for you. It's there on the slide. Mr. E.B. Marden, among the many managers of different entertainments with whom we have come into contact, we know of none better than Mr. E.B. Marden, manager and treasurer for Professor Hermann. And we congratulate the professor on having so agreeable and accomplished a gentleman to do his business for him, one who understands it so thoroughly. Mr. M will always find a welcome in Omaha. Now, RFM, in your episode of July 31st entitled Joseph Smith Hypnotist, you talked about stage magic at length.
Yes.
And we know you to be an historian of magic acts. Can you tell us a little more about Professor Alexander Hermann?
Oh, he was one of the most renowned magicians of the 19th century. Everyone knows that. Any fool can tell you that, Lee.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me to be a bit of a smoking gun because so from Ed Marden's ability to convince this world-renowned magician that Marden had experience in creating stage illusions enough to hire him as his manager and his treasurer, we see that Marden was rather intimately familiar with the ways in which an audience could be thoroughly fooled by the appearance of the supernatural.
Are you taking what happened in 76 and retroactively applying it to 71?
I am absolutely saying that this is an indication that he knew about stage illusions. He and Cogswell knew how to do this because they had worked with one another before. And as we're going to see, they worked with one another for the next 20 years.
Oh, they were intimate chums.
Oh, they were very intimate chums, but we'll get to that right at the end. Um, Carter's bedraggled troop arrives in Salt Lake City in the middle of June 1871. Oh, here's another slide with um, another newspaper item. Mr. Marden, Professor Herman's treasurer, gave us a pleasant call last evening. This is March 21st, 1876. He's a well-known member of the theatrical profession and makes a half hour pass very pleasantly in reciting the trials and tribulations of a manager. So he went there to complain. But these are several bits of ephemera that celebrated Alexander Herman. He wrote a manual on stage illusions. Here's a oh, sorry. Let's go back to that one because it's good. Here's a poster. Ask Alexander, the man who knows. He's a fortune teller. And Herman's Book of Magic, Black Art Explored. And
Exposed.
excuse me,
Okay.
exposed. He was he was really the guy who inspired Houdini to expose charlatans. And it was at that point that Marden apparently made his exit from the company of Professor Herman. But for a while, he was working with him. So here come Carter's dramatic combination, and they were received by Brigham Young, who was baffled by their story but eager to accept them as willing converts and famous ones. Young immediately engaged them as resident stars in his Salt Lake theater. Cogswell and Marden eagerly used the transition as their opportunity to end the parlor trick. And on the day of their arrival in Salt Lake City, the spirit guides said, basically, our work is done here. They bade farewell to the company, and the planchette would no longer write messages for Carrie Cogswell and Edward Marden. And my contention is that that was because Marden was no longer moving the other side of the planchette. And Carrie was no longer fooled after that. But within 18 months, everything had changed. And here's where things go wonky. By the next year, Jared Carter, had denounced his theatrical profession in favor of the LDS mission field. And Carter's dramatic combination became the Carrie Carter combination, led by his wife. Carter then brought a new wife back from the mission field of Illinois, Carrie Carter, who had been his wife for 8 years, who had traversed the desert with him, and who had been his leading lady at the Salt Lake Theater before he renounced acting for proselyting, had quite suddenly become, wait for it, the fourth polygamous spouse of Ogden Bishop Lester Herrick. Though Carrie seems never to have lived with him or had anything whatsoever to do with his household, and by the year after that, in December 1874, Jared Carter was dead. So, what happened here? Well, it all brings us back to the letter. Let's begin with the wealth of evidence within the letter itself, the identity of its author, M.A. Walker, and speculate on how in the world the letter got into the LDS archives in the first place, and why on earth such an embarrassing document was kept there. Now, the author of this letter, M.A. Walker, actually turns out to be fairly easy to identify if one takes the trouble. She is Marianne Morton Walker. Historian Shane J. Chisholm wrote an article about her in 2011 with the title of the famous hymn she wrote under the name Marianne Morton, entitled "Sweet is the Peace, a Portrait of Marianne Morton Walker." And because the documentation of the letter has been neglected, no one puts two and two together to figure out that M.A. Walker was Marianne Morton. And Marianne Morton Walker turns out to have been an interesting person. Chisholm relates that Mary Ann Morton was born in England in 1806, emigrated to the United States as an LDS convert, lived in Salt Lake City for a time, wrote some poems for the church, married a Mr. Walker, moved to Illinois, and died there in 1873. What Chisholm's article does not relate is that Mary Ann Morton Walker was, once again, wait for it, a spiritualist, and that the place that she moved to with her husband was DeKalb, Illinois, which was the hometown of actor Jared Carter Jr. Having become disaffected from Brigham Young's church, Walker joined the reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as had Jared Carter Sr. and family prior to Sr.'s death in 1849. It was this RLDS congregation in which actor Jared Jr. grew up. Walker had left Salt Lake City for Illinois toward the end of her life after marrying Mr. Walker. Interior evidence in the letter, which we shall hear shortly, implies that Carter has only recently arrived in Salt Lake City. August 1871 is therefore clearly the year of the letter. Now, in this slide, I've magnified the first page of Walker's letter to demonstrate what RFM was talking about, exactly why it's been ignored for so long, and that is because it's practically illegible. It takes a very long time to decipher. The back of each page is bled into the page behind it, and it's only once a reader has deciphered it by punching up the contrast as much as humanly possible and doing the little sharpening and defining thing with the image that the reader realizes two things. First of all, what are supposed to be pages 1 and 2 of the letter have been placed in the middle of the file and photographed that way as pages 5 and 6. Moreover, 2 full manuscript pages are completely missing, so that the letter doesn't make much sense in its microfilmed order. The summarizer who described the file was almost certainly a graduate student or other volunteer who had a lot of other things to do and neither knew nor cared who Jared Carter or M.A. Walker were, much less the circumstances under which the letter was written or significance or what in the world it was doing in the archive in the first place. So it's understandable how this letter has been ignored and banished to its darkened corner. So let's bring it into the light, shall we? So the document is listed in the description as ND, no date, but we can actually date this letter from M.A. Walker to Jared Carter quite specifically. Of the year, there can be no doubt it's 1871, and the letter itself tells us that it is August of 1871.
And can I just say here,
yes,
as I put things together, that it couldn't have been, it says August, it doesn't say the year. It couldn't have been August of 1870 because they hadn't gotten to Salt Lake City yet.
Mm-hmm.
And if it had been August of 1872, they wouldn't have arrived there recently.
That's correct.
Okay, got it.
Absolutely. Of its receipt by Carter in that year, it must be no later than the first week of September, because that is the simplest explanation for the reason Brigham Young turned his eulogy for a young woman on September 16th into a bizarre discourse on the nature of the afterlife and a battleground between Orthodox Mormon theology under Brigham Young's rule and the counterclaims of spiritualism in defiance of him, but more on that a little later. So remaining on this slide for a while, let's dive into the letter with some occasional annotations by yours truly. We're going to go back here. RFM and Bill, please step in at any time to ask questions or to make observations.
Yeah, would you please explain to the audience what looks like this can't be right, which is where on most of the letter, she's just writing normal, as we would write at least, English left to right, top to bottom.
Right.
But then over here on this part, on the left, you've got lines that are going up and down. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them going up and down.
Yeah.
And on the right, you've got another 1, 2, 3, 4 lines going up and down, and they seem to box in those lines more text that's between them. That's the yellow highlighted section that you have there on the slide.
It's funny that you ask that. What what Marianne Morton Walker has done here is to write Jared a little poem. And she's written him a poem to save his soul, because she is convinced that she's had a revelation that he should not be an actor anymore. And her poem sounds like this. There's a little prolegomenon, a little introduction to it, and then she gets into her poem, and she has boxed in the poem in the center of the page. This is very well graphically planned. Um, the box is the next 3 paragraphs of the letter. So it reads with the block in the middle, and then to the right, you have to turn the paper 90 degrees in order to read that, and then back another 90 degrees to read the next paragraph, and then over 90 degrees to read the other one. Now, I had hoped to have this letter read in a woman's voice, because I think that's historically
Gold is a great
significant.
woman's voice. Trust
Oh,
me.
um, we're going to take a hard pass on that this time.
It sounds kind of like Geraldine.
Well, I've tried it, and it comes off sounding very much like Graham Chapman and John Cleese from Monty Python, as in, "Hello, Mrs. Premise. Oh, hello, Mrs. Conclusion."
I think handle it.
What was that?
I think I could handle it.
You could totally handle it. I say, are there any women in the crowd?
No. No. I think it's historically significant to hear it in a woman's voice. It's vitally important in the present day, obviously. And I contacted our mutual friend Rebecca Biblioteca to do the reading, because she and I have worked together on rediscovered letters before. Shout out to Rebecca. Alas, she's otherwise engaged this evening.
She actually, at this point, could be right in the middle of a tropical storm.
Oh my goodness.
I've been keeping tabs on her.
Oh gosh.
She was up on the second floor
Uh-huh.
of the like the big dining hall, and sent me a picture and said she was getting definite Poseidon Adventure vibes.
Oh geez. I hope she's okay.
Yes, well, I told her if she took a video when she was going down for the last time, I would make sure it went viral for her.
Oh, she is our Shelley Winters.
She's
got to have she has got to have a morning after.
She will be the Mormon after.
Yes, there's got to be a Mormon.
I'm sorry, I laughed so hard about Shelley Winters because we have this running gag about Shelley Winters ever since Rebecca inadvertently got her confused with Rosemary Clooney, and I've never let her forget it.
Wow.
I guess it's understandable.
Okay, then the next time I speak to Rebecca, I will need to work that in somehow.
Yes.
I do have this voice.
I'll do it in my own voice. And
I can't even read it. How do you read it?
The letter?
Yes.
It took me 3 months to transcribe that letter accurately.
I hope you're doing other things in between.
Oh heavens, yes.
Okay.
But it's you can't pay too much attention. It's one must do the contrast thing and then magnify it and go through every single word. And some of the words are still illegible after that.
So this is the poem that's
yes.
written by Mary Walker Morton.
Yeah.
To our hero, Jared Carter Jr.
Yes.
Which encapsulates what she thinks Joseph Smith has told her to communicate to him.
That's in the rest of the letter.
Oh, that's the rest.
The rest of the letter, page 2. For a bit of context, let's remember that Jared Carter, along with his wife, Carrie's brother, Bill Cogswell, Edward B. Marden, they've all enjoyed a very successful summer of 1871 of performances at Brigham Young Salt Lake Theater for the remainder of June, July, and August. Young has baptized them all as Latter-day Saints, pronounced upon them the blessings of heaven, and then Jared gets this letter, and all hell breaks loose. The first page of the letter, remember, begins on microfilm manuscript page 5 due to the confusion with the manila envelope that's been scanned, and the letter begins this way. Heading is DeKalb County, Illinois, August. Dear brother in humanity, Walker begins, I have been much surprised by learning that you were in Salt Lake City and feel some regret that I had not earlier followed the impression of mind I had so deeply felt to address you before, but thinking I might probably see you personally in DeKalb this summer, had flattered myself of a more verbal opportunity of communication. You will remember I informed you, I think, in my last letter to you, that I had revelations from Joseph Smith Jr. This I affirm, and now feel it is my indispensable duty to send you copies of some of them to be disposed of by you as an honest mind may direct. You have proved to me that you are a believer in the spiritual phenomena, and as I am informed, you have thereby been directed to the course that you have taken. Am I not also to understand that Brigham Young has received, baptized, and ordained you in compliance with revelations from that source? And such being the case, I am the more encouraged and deeper impressed to fulfill the task, feeling a responsibility resting upon me. Also, as I am led to presume Brigham and others have been deceived, I also trust they will be ready to believe and receive both, or at least investigate the subject presented. At all
Lee,
events, yes,
Lee, does this letter have an intermission?
yes,
Okay, good.
it's the poem.
Well, good. He can't
Basically,
come soon enough.
what she's saying, she's setting Jared up because she said, you and I have talked about the spiritual phenomena. I've told you how convinced I am that it's a true thing. And I've told you that I have revelations from Joseph Smith from the afterlife about what is true and what is false about what's going on in Salt Lake City. So I want to draw our attention to the next paragraph, the one I'm highlighting in the center of the slide, because Walker intends to impress her point upon Jared Carter by writing him a little poem, as one does. And it is no exaggeration to claim that we are now reading the words that unhinged Carter's mind and destroyed the world as he knew it. Remember, he thinks that he has been directed by spirit guides to become Mormon. And he has landed, he has a seat on the gravy train. They are going to play as Brigham Young's favored troupe for the rest of their lives at the Salt Lake Theater. And then he gets this letter, and the poem reads, God and Mammon, oh, be wiser. Serve them both, it cannot be. Saint, comedian, and baptizer, these will never long agree. Can your judgment thus deceive you? Is that Holy Spirit fled, which from sin did once retrieve men, and in gospel your steps led? We need to take a moment to absorb with Jared Carter the full impact of what Marianne Morton Walker was saying to him with this little poem and in the following pages. Consider the fact that Carter was at this point 34 years old. The stage was the only profession he had ever held. And at this very moment, he and his wife of 8 years, Carrie, had just achieved the apex of their fame. Moreover, they had been brought by direction of spirit guides to be baptized by Brigham. The voices of those guides had fallen silent, but now Walker, both a Mormon, a Josephite Mormon, not a Brighamite Mormon, and a spiritualist whom he trusted, was telling Carter that his livelihood and Carrie's were putting their mortal souls in danger. You can't be an actor and a saint at the same time. This was an attitude that everybody held in the 19th century, except the Mormons. And even the Mormons thought, well, okay, we'll accept theater and acting, but it needs to be the right material, and everyone on stage needs to be Mormon. Carter she was arguing, could not be a faithful Mormon and an actor at the same time. And the spirit guides with whom Walker was in contact were telling her to tell Carter that it was all Brigham Young's diabolical doing, meaning letting theater into the Mormon world. And Walker then continued the letter in prose, and no, there's not much of an intermission. But basically, what she's telling him is that the revelations that I'm getting and the spirit voices that I want you to listen to now are telling you to leave the stage. And you're under evil influence because you are there with Brigham Young.
I would have wanted a second opinion.
Yeah, and he went and looked for one, because the rest of this letter, which we can get into if you'd like, but I don't want to spend a whole nother hour on it. The revelations say that Joseph Smith is tortured in the afterlife, and I am going to go through this because it bears a strange resemblance to a certain Dickens novella that was popular at the time. Can't quite put my finger on it, but the revelation that she has says, "I am the spirit of Joseph Smith." This is in the letter, whose whole concern whilst living is well known in various parts of the world, and whose death is likewise recorded. Therefore, I am only commanded to state that my concern was ended on the 27th of June, 1844, in a manner at which human nature would shrink at the recapitulation of. And he goes on to talk about, yes,
Does he say who shot him?
no,
Shoot. I
I
thought maybe we
know.
finally have the answer.
I
Whether
know,
it's
I
John Taylor
know.
with the pistol in the Carthage jail.
You would yes, you would think that this version of Clue would be the most satisfying.
Yeah.
But it is not. He does not give those those particular details. What he does say was, quoting the revelation, "I swerved from the path of truth which was laid out for me, and though frequent warnings were revealed to me against hypocrisy and all evils to which the human race is subject, yet I continued to set forth deceptive and delusive doctrines mixed with what I knew were just and holy unto him who had called me to this mighty mission, caused me to end my career ignominiously."
You know, it's amazing that Mary believes the exact same things that Joseph Smith's spirit believes.
Isn't that amazing? I agree with you. It's uncanny.
I am the spirit of Joseph Smith. There it is.
Yeah. And so what he says is, for my disobedience, well, let me give a little foreshadowing here. This next section of the letter, and it's the last I'm going to spend any time on, deserves our special attention. We need to bear in mind a couple of literary references that are called to mind by Walker's flowery prose. First off, the following description of the afterlife is a callback to Canto 23 of Dante's Inferno, in which hypocrites are punished through donning richly vested robes invisibly lined with lead, so they're intolerably heavy.
I always
And
hated that canto.
yeah, I mean, it's not a comfortable part of the poem. It's the most entertaining, though. There is also a reference to My Lady, which is a clear reference to Joseph Smith's widow Emma.
Edna?
Who's Edna?
He had a lot of them, but I don't recall an Edna.
I don't recall an Edna either. It's my grandmother's name. Who had remained in Nauvoo and remarried, and Jared Carter is meant by Walker to infer that Joseph's introduction of polygamy into the theology of the Latter-day Saints incurred the punishment of Smith's spirit, damned to witness his wife's domestic life with her second husband, Louis Biederman.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to get over the fact your grandmother was married to Joseph Smith.
Let's just put that out there, shall we?
I can think of a third, by the way. You've got your Dante Canto. That sounds vaguely obscene. You've got your Dante Canto and your Marley was dead to begin with. This is the chain I forged in life.
Exactly. You see,
I got
the
another
picture?
one. You want it?
Sure.
Can you go back one, Bill?
That's me.
Am the spirit of Joseph Smith,
Mm-hmm.
doomed for a certain term to walk the night.
Yes. Yeah.
And by the day and for the day confined to fast and fires.
that,
That's kind of similar, isn't it?
well, it's funny that you mention that. As I was transcribing this passage, its vivid ghostly scenario had a familiar ring to it, as it did with you, RFM.
Mm-hmm.
And to relay the impact on me personally, I have to let you know that the first dramatic role I ever played was in a third grade production at El Roble School in my hometown of Gilroy, California. I played Marley's ghost in A Christmas Carol.
Did you? I'll bet
I
you were sensational.
I was one of the great 8-year-old Marleys. And in these revelations, the spirit of Joseph Smith, we hear an echo of Marley's damned spirit, which was just recited by RFM in
Mm.
Charles Dickens' wildly popular novella of 1843. He's sent with a mission, and we'll go back to that picture that's from an edition of A Christmas Carol right here. He's been sent with a mission to warn its its
Easy
speaker.
for you to say.
Yes, it is. This I am commanded to declare. He says it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is not a coincidence. Dickens' novella A Christmas Carol was enjoying an explosion of popularity in the United States at exactly the historical moment as the revelations in this letter, due to a review in the New York Times back in 1863. And see if you can't pick out the way Walker's revelations from the spirit of Joseph Smith resonates with Marley's ghost. 4 years, this is from the letter, and this is the last passage I'm going to read. 4 years have now elapsed since I passed the final boundary of darkness, beyond which I mingled with the yells, screams, and reproaches of myriad spirits, and still remain with the hypocrites of my class, in which state we dread the experience of a future state. Therefore, I am commanded to do alone to the world that hypocrisy on professions outwardly of that which the conscience secretly denies will meet with a just punishment when reaching the spheres where I now inhabit. And I am commanded to declare, and on and on and on.
He's a loquacious son of a gun, isn't he?
He's a loquacious son of a gun, and
He actually uses words a lot the same way as Mary.
he does,
That's
and
funny.
a lot the same way as Charles Dickens, as well. And so when you go all the way through this letter and try to put yourself in the place of Jared Carter, we return to the overall question at which we hinted at earlier. What was the effect on him and what happened after he received it? There's only one conclusion I can come to. It quite literally scared the hell out of him. So
Apparently, now this is very interesting because it kind of it's a reversal of things from the
Mhm.
normal Mormon way of viewing stuff,
mhm,
which is that Brigham Young is the man who
Mhm.
receives the revelation
mhm,
for the church and anybody in the church.
mhm,
He receives revelation for those people.
mhm.
But this individual, Jared Carter Jr., is putting priority over some lady back in
Mhm.
DeKalb who says that Joseph Smith is telling her stuff.
Well, he is certainly confused by the whole thing.
Yes.
And that begs the question, what is this letter doing in the archives of the Latter-day Saints? How did it get there? What's the provenance of the letter? It was written from DeKalb, Illinois, and clearly reached its mark to Jared Carter and
Mhm.
got to him. And I'm making some very broad assumptions here, but I think they're borne out by subsequent events. Apparently, immediately upon reading it, Jared Carter read it to Carrie and told her that the afterlife was speaking with a clear directive. In order to avoid utter damnation, he needed to leave the stage and become a Mormon missionary. And this next part is key. And Carrie needed to come with him. And from what knowledge we have of Carrie Carter's strong disposition, we can only surmise that she absolutely refused to quit her dramatic profession. And this created an enormous problem for Brigham Young. Why? Because Brigham Young had made a great public show out of the Carters' conversion. For many years, he had struggled to keep his place in place his original dictum that only baptized Orthodox Mormons be allowed to tread the boards of his theater. Ultimately, he lost that battle, but now he had 4 actors he had baptized personally, starring in its company. And then Jared Carter gets this letter and goes immediately to Young with it, telling him he has to leave the stage to save his soul. So that sets the stage for this next thing.
Couldn't Brigham have just said, look, you're right. You're just going to serve a local mission during the day. You can go knock on doors of the widows in Parawan, but at night you got to be back here in Salt Lake doing your part.
He could have, but Jared Carter was convinced by his friend, Marianne Morton Walker, that his soul was in danger if he remained an actor. And she wasn't alone in that assumption. In fact, he'd been hearing that his entire life as an actor in the 1850s and 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Every religious person he had ever met looked down on him specifically because he was an actor. So that brings us to the morning of September 16th, 1871. Brigham Young had a lot on his mind as he strode into the assembly rooms of the brand new 13th Ward Chapel on the morning of September 16th, 1871. He had a eulogy to deliver for the funeral of Aurelia Spencer. Aurelia Spencer had died of typhoid fever only 2 days beforehand at the age of 21, and the community was in shock. Circumstance was far from extraordinary for the 19th century. Typhus was an all too common cause of death, but the Spencers were no ordinary family. Brigham Young Jr. was married to Catherine Curtis Spencer, cousin to the decedent. The family had asked Brigham Sr. himself to deliver the eulogy. The funeral was scheduled at the Assembly Hall in the 13th Ward in anticipation of a large body of relatives and friends. Young's remarks on this occasion were more than private words to the mourners. He wanted to make a public statement, so much so that he later had it reported verbatim in the Deseret News, and his address was canonized in the LDS Journal of Discourses. Young intended this particular eulogy not only to comfort and admonish the gathered congregation, but to represent his church's Orthodox views. Even the location of the service in which he gave his address was meaningful. The 13th Ward assembly rooms were right around the corner from the dissident Liberal Institute, championed by William S. Godbey and H.L.T. Harrison, which had opened on July 3rd to much fanfare. Now, from the countless ways that Brigham Young might have opened Aurelia Spencer's eulogy, Young chose one that was oddly specific and topical. He began, "There has been considerable said, and well said, with regard to our existence." Okay, the mourners could be forgiven for having expected something different from what followed, but it was resonant with Young's state of mind that morning. He had had less than 2 days since Aurelia's death to prepare his remarks, perhaps fewer than 24 hours. And yet, curiously, Aurelia Spencer's eulogy was a finished piece, not an extemporaneous exercise off the top of his head. It was ready for publication in the public press. Young had clearly been thinking about his theme for some time. "And I will say this," he continued, "as for the gospel of the Son of God, it is here. As for the priesthood, it is here. As for the keys of priesthood, they are here and are enjoyed by this people called Latter-day Saints." Now, this might not have seemed entirely consistent with the consolation of family and friends grieving the untimely death of a young woman, but this was Brother Brigham, not merely the father-in-law of a Spencer cousin, but the very defender and revelator of such doctrine.
And look what Joseph Smith did at King Follett's funeral.
Exactly. Funerals, funerals are among the Latter-day Saints, as far as I can tell as an historian, are occasions for more than just funeral potatoes. They are arenas in which doctrine can be espoused. And in hindsight, Young's remarks were a defiant counterattack in a debate that was heating up in Salt Lake City. And my own view is that Young seized upon Aurelia Spencer's eulogy to rebut what he saw as spiritualist heresies. And the specific heretic he had on his mind that day was Mary Ann Morton Walker. Her letter to Jared Carter, which Carter had apparently handed over to Brigham in explanation of the reason that he was leaving the stage, which
And how it got into the church history archives.
exactly, which explains how it has been preserved, was currently wreaking havoc in the Carter's marriage and in the stock company of the Salt Lake Theater. And Young likely felt himself vulnerable if he did not take a public stand immediately. The story of the Carters' journey through the desert led by spirit guards was now public knowledge. The Carters themselves had made no secret of the circumstances, and Young could not rebut them. He had baptized them and put them immediately on the stage of the Salt Lake Theater. His reputation as spiritual leader of the Latter-day Saints was at stake. Now, as Young continued the eulogy, his remarks skewed more and more in the direction of contrasting LDS orthodoxy with spiritualism. So he looks at the family. A few words to my friends, he said, presumably fixing his eyes on the mourning Spencer family. He says, to preach or talk to the dead in answer to a question that no one had asked, I have never undertaken to do. I talk to the living on such occasions as this. No one had asked him whether he talked to the dead. And on today of all days, why was Brigham Young finding it necessary to insist that he had never preached or talked to the dead? It was not until he fired the salvo against spiritualism that he began Aurelia Spencer's eulogy in earnest. Remember, he's been talking all this time about this other stuff, and now he begins the eulogy. We are assembled this morning to pay our last respects to the remains of a beloved sister. And that revealed the preoccupation of his mind during that late summer and early fall of 1871. The Walker letter was just the latest of a number of irritants introduced by a growing group of dissident Mormons who had become spiritualists. Over the previous 2 weeks, the Salt Lake Tribune, Weekly Tribune, had promoted a petition to establish a movement in defiance of Young's authority and establish a new progressive church that acknowledged the spirit world, replete with a burgeoning agenda for women's suffrage and leadership. The Godbeites had declared themselves openly, and Young used Aurelia Spencer's funeral to mount his dogmatic response to their temerity without once naming them. His eulogy of Aurelia hinged on the Mormon concept of priesthood and authority to which the Godbeites around the corner did not subscribe. So what he said was, now she has stepped through the door. The partition separating this from the next state of existence, she will continue to labor just as much as she has done in the last year or the last 5 years. Nothing remains here for us but to pay our last respects to that which came from Mother Earth. It was formed and fashioned, and the spirit was put into it, and it has grown and become what it is, and the spirit having departed, the body lies ready to return to the bosom of its mother. Sister Aurelia moves, talks, walks, enjoys, and beholds that which we cannot enjoy and behold while we are in these tabernacles of clay. Okay, that sounds like a eulogy, does it not?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no, and no spiritualist would argue with any of that. But Young then draws a bright line of Mormon orthodoxy, intentionally contrasting the obedient and pure in heart with the wicked. She is in glory. She has passed the ordeals and has reached a position in which the power of Satan has no influence upon her. The advantage of this priesthood that Brother George A. Smith has been talking about. Apparently, George A. Smith delivered a speech before this. is when persons yield obedience to it, they secure themselves the sanction of him who is its author. So he talks about obedience. He contrasts the wicked and the righteous. And a person who obeys the priesthood of the Son of God is entirely free from all of this wickedness. He's quoting Doctrine and Covenants 76:112. Where the pure in heart are, the wicked cannot come. This, Young pronounced, is the state of the spirit world. And now his eulogy struck at the very root of the spiritualist inspiration, the longing that had ignited the movement's rapid growth after the Civil War. Young conjured a mental picture of a seance as he addressed the decedent's mother and family directly. So he says, looking at them, I will say to Sister Spencer and the relatives and friends of the deceased, do not wish her back again. I do not suppose you do. And I will say further that if you could talk with her and she with you, as you could a short time since, you could not prevail upon her to come back if you had the power to do so. Young had a great deal more to say about Mormon moral theology and cosmology, and much of it had been articulated by a spiritualist, or could have been. This light is preparatory to an exalted state of existence. And he goes on to say that when we pass into the spirit world, we shall possess a measure of this power. The power the faithful will possess. However, spiritualists are not the faithful. They will not have this power.
Lee, I got to ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
I understand, I think, what spiritualism is.
Mm-hmm.
Basically being led, contacted by the spirits, having mediums, seances, communications, rappings, whatever it is.
That's right.
Communications from the dead.
Yes.
Mormon folklore is rife with these kinds of communications and appearances and apparitions. In fact, so much so that other people who are not members of the church will look at it and think, geez, why do you have all these ghosts in your temple? I mean, isn't that like creepy and not Christian? But it's very much part of the Mormon cultural way of looking at things.
It
And
is.
I'm wondering, are you saying, well, did it have its genesis in the spiritualism that you're talking about? Is this how it came into Mormonism? What I'm saying is, did it start with Mormonism or was it inserted into it by spiritualism?
Let's remember where Mormonism and spiritualism both had their birth.
New York?
In the burned over district in New York. It was baked into the DNA of the culture. Speaking to spirits, and to be fair, there are spirits in the Old Testament of the Bible, not the Old
Witch of
Testament.
Endor.
There's the Witch of Endor, Saul is told not to conjure the spirit of Samuel, and he does so anyway.
Yeah, it's a bad thing.
And it's a bad thing. He's punished for it. He's killed for it. Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. There are prohibitions against speaking to the spirits, and yet there was an enormous wave of spiritualism after the Civil War as people tried to contact their sons who had died. And that came to a head in exactly this year of 1871, because the Godbeites were directly challenging Brigham Young's authority, and he knew he had to tamp this down. So he had to draw a bright line between LDS orthodoxy and what the spiritualists and Godbeites were saying, that Brigham has too much power, that he is exercising that power to the detriment of business people in Salt Lake City. And moreover, they had formed a coalition. Some of them were women suffragists. Some of them were there was a progressive spirit in this movement. And it turned out to be a progressive spirit and a coalition that could not hang together. because eventually Brigham Young was successful at breaking the spiritualist coalition away from the rest of them, and particularly effective at breaking the feminist impulse away from the rest of that coalition. And he throws in a dig at opponents of polygamy in this eulogy for good measure. He says, outsiders have a great deal to say about the trials of our females. Are the trials of our females to compare with the sorrows that the wicked would have to pass through? Not by any means. Their sorrow and grief are unto death. Our trials are to make us perfect and to prepare us for the reward of the just, even the glories of the next world.
Mm-hmm.
And now Young wound up for his big conclusion, opening with a line that any spiritualist could agree with: this life is given to prepare for the next. And he went in for the orthodox coup de grace, contrasting faithful Mormons with all dissenters, spiritualists to be inferred among the latter. And this is the end of it. The rich and the great may glut themselves with the luxury of the earth. The humble, faithful servants and saints care not for this. They know this earth is not their permanent abiding place, and when they look forward to eternity, their prospect is bright and glorious, a place in which we may learn the first lesson toward exaltation, and that is obedience to the gospel of the Son of God. God bless you, my friends. Mic drop. And he was out of there.
Lee, just so people know, if they're interested in the chronology,
Yes.
which is that Joseph Smith, of course, passed away in June 27th, 1844. And the birth of spiritualism has been pinpointed by most experts to Hydesville, New York, 1848. So 4 years later.
Yes.
So if that's correct, then Joseph Smith wouldn't have been putting spiritualism into Mormonism.
No,
it would have
no.
come in under Brigham Young, right?
Right.
Or someone afterward.
Right. But yes, spiritualism made its way into the Salt Lake Valley on Brigham Young's watch, and it made its way really. It seeped into everything and everyone under his purview.
Lee, can I ask Bill a question here? And I'm going to ask the same question to you, okay?
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about Joseph Smith. I'm thinking about all the people he said appeared to him. And I don't think he ever had, did he ever have Alvin appear to him? He saw him in a vision, he said, but I think that's different than someone showing up and communicating with you. You know, he had angels and Jesus and God, but that's kind of the prophet that Joseph Smith was. Can you think of any person that Joseph Smith knew or was related to that Joseph Smith said showed up to him with a message? I'm coming up blank.
I can't think of anything.
So if that's correct, zero spiritualism for Joseph Smith in his version of Mormonism.
That's a question that is worth another show. Absolutely.
Okay, well,
I don't know the answer.
Give us a call in 2.5 more years. It will only seem like 3.
Yeah.
But give us a call. Let's know what you find out. It's just a question I had.
Sure.
But I think that's really interesting because I know you're not a Mormon, right, Lee?
I'm a Nevmo.
You are a never Mormon, so you don't know about this.
Hey,
Bill, would you say I'm being correct when I say that I'd always thought it was built into Mormonism, though apparently it arrived at a later date. This whole idea about having ancestors show up with information to you, or you usually about, genealogy or whatever, who you should marry.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of asking ChatGPT to go research that and see if Joseph Smith ever did claim to talk to somebody after they passed away that he knew in this life.
Right. Because Nephi doesn't count. Moroni doesn't count.
And Jesus and God don't count.
No.
So anyway, I'll come back on here if I find anything, but I don't think I think you're right. I think that did not happen.
All right, Lee, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
That's all right. I was just going to say that Young was speaking not only to spiritualists in general, but Godbeites in particular. And he was laying down the gauntlet to Marianne Morton Walker, whose apostasy was now robbing him of an actor he had baptized himself only 12 weeks before he delivered this State of the Spirit World address. And
She's like a
leaving
double apostate. She's not only a reorganite, she's a spiritualist.
Yes. Who'd have thunk it? So, as the 1871 wore on, Brigham Young's dilemma must have grown more alarming. And I'm presuming that the Walker letter was proving to be a huge problem. The Carters had become popular stars, but now Jared was terrified that continuing on the stage would condemn him to walk the earth like the spirit of Joseph Smith in Walker's letter. And Jared was insisting that Carey leave the stage with him, and Carey was having none of it. The argument between the two wore on into the summer and fall of 1872. When Young allowed them to go on a series of long tours throughout Utah and into Nevada, hoping that they could work things out, but they didn't. And what happened next was very curious indeed, leading us to our title, Brigham Young, Matchmaker to the Stars. We're going to do a tasty bit of forensic investigation into the evidence available from the very nosy 19th century practice of publishing in the newspaper the names of people who had recently checked into local hotels. On October 7th of 1872, the Carters, who were now living northward in Ogden, checked into the Townsend House Hotel, site of the present-day Salt Palace, 102 to 106 Southwest Temple, on the same day as Lester J. Herrick, mayor and bishop of Ogden. Carey's brother Bill Cogswell arrived at the hotel the next day. Further, the arrival report in the Deseret Evening News recorded Carey as having arrived not from Ogden, but from Pioche, Nevada, i.e., she's been touring without Jared. So what's going on here? Well, this is my speculation, that Brigham Young was about to exercise his power as matchmaker to the stars of his Salt Lake Theater. All four of them, Herrick, the Carters, and Bill Cogswell, had been summoned to meet with Brigham Young and broker a solution to the spiritual, marital, and vocational woes of the Carters. Now, in my reconstruction with this available evidence, it happened something like this. First, Carey refuses to follow Jared in his determination to leave the stage and go into the mission field. Second, Brigham Young enjoins her, as she will not be obedient to Jared, her husband, leave the stage, to accept divorce and remarriage to someone who would accept her vocation as an actress. Number three, Young offers Carey the alternative of marriage to Mayor and Bishop of Ogden, Lester J. Herrick, as Herrick's fourth polygamous wife, in exchange for allowing her to continue to make a living on the stage of the Salt Lake Theater. Number four, the presence of Bill Cogswell there only days before he arrived from California, perhaps summoned, suggests that allegations he was to make in interviews and lectures were not far off the mark. In lectures and interviews between 1878 and 1883, Bill Cogswell alleged the following details of this summit. Number one, that Carey was intimidated into a marriage by the authorities of the Mormon Church with Bishop Herrick of Ogden. Number two, that Bill was himself forced to be a witness and sign his name to a document separating Carey from her husband, J.W. Carter. Number three, that said J.W. Carter was forced to sign a paper by Brigham Young releasing all claim to his marriage vow to Carey. And number four, that he, Bill Cogswell, escaped by the advice of a friend, hotly pursued by the Danites, that in various places he had narrow escapes from losing his life by the said Danites. Now, the fourth point is almost certainly a complete fabrication for purposes of publicity. The first 3 points, go ahead.
And have the documents mentioned in point 2 and 3 been located?
No, but we're about to see how it probably happened without this fabulation. We're gonna mine down and strip this stuff away. The difference being that so far from being intimidated, Carey realized that the sham marriage to Herrick was the best among bad alternatives, because it would allow her to stay in the Salt Lake Theater stock company, have her own place to live, physically distanced from Herrick, and free of any obligation to live in the same household with Jared and his new wife that he brought back from Illinois. Now, apparently, Jared gave Brigham Young gave Jared and Carrie Carter another 2 months to think about the deal, because there was another summit at Townsend House on December 16th. And this time, Herrick had come from Ogden, Jared from Pioche, Nevada, and Carrie from Eureka, Nevada. The Carters were still performing, but in different towns. By December 19th, a seismic shift had taken place. In their first performances together since the summit in October, Carrie, Judd, and Bill all appeared at the Ogden Opera House, not as Carter's dramatic combination managed by Jared Carter, but instead for the first time as the Carrie Carter combination. Jared had handed the company off to Carrie to begin his transition from stage actor to Mormon missionary. And now things are about to get even weirder. Less than a month later, on January 15th of 1873, a decree of divorce was filed in Ogden. Now, RFM, I'd like to walk through this with you legally, okay? So here we have a defendant. Can you read the name of the defendant?
Yes, Jared Carter.
Okay,
Which would
Jared.
suggest that Carrie filed.
Okay. Filing date,
January
1/15.
15th. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Case type,
Divorce.
opposing party.
Carter.
Okay. There's no defendant in this case.
You mean plaintiff?
Excuse me. There's no plaintiff in this case.
So there's nothing underneath that that
There
newspaper clipping that says engaged?
there is not. Let me move that. I'm going to move that over here. Thank you for making that, for having me move that.
Is there typically in other documents like this summaries of cases?
Yes.
Oh, it says plaintiff 0.
Plaintiff 0.
Hmm.
There
It's like
is no
patient 0.
plaintiff in this case. I don't know what this says to you. What this says to me is they've decided to divorce. There's a defendant. There's an opposing party, but there's no plaintiff. This is something that's been orchestrated by Brigham Young. That's what it says to me.
Is there any reason they wouldn't just put Carrie Carter there in plaintiff? They've already said Carter's the opposing party. It's a divorce case.
But she's not the plaintiff. She has she's agreed to this.
Do you have any of the actual divorce documents?
We do not. Which also tells me, oh, somebody kind of pulled those.
Yeah, if it's an agreed thing, somebody still has to be the plaintiff and somebody has to be the defendant.
Exactly. There is no plaintiff in this case. I think it's because it was orchestrated by Brigham.
I think it means they're not really divorced.
Well, that is an interesting question, because she is married to Bishop Herrick. And I looked for a full 10 years before I finally found any evidence that she was regarded as Carrie Herrick. She's only listed as Carrie Herrick in this document here. Let's see if I can move that again. I beg your pardon, because I think that's important for us to see. Here we go. There are 2 documents that I have finally found that acknowledge that Carrie Herrick was Carrie Herrick. Herrick, Carrie Cogswell. That was actually her name before she assumed the stage name Cogswell.
Yeah, because Bill Cogswell was her brother.
Exactly. And Bill had that name as well. And it says her birth date was 29 August 1838. She was actually born in 1834, and everyone who knew her knew it. It was only when she started acting that she changed her age.
So the name here says Herrick, Mrs. Carey, actress. What
Mhm.
is this list from?
This is from the 1874 Directory of Salt Lake City. This is the phone book before phones. This is the city directory.
They had phone books before phones. How progressive. How
Yeah,
could Brigham have known?
Herrick, Mrs. Carey, actress, resident in the 13th Ward between, let's see, First East and between First and Second South. First East Street between First and Second South. So she had her own place. Brigham had set her up, apparently with the understanding that Herrick was supposed to support her financially in some way. That's not exactly what happens. I think Lester kind of tired of this whole thing. As we see in the newspaper notice up here, engaged. Othello's occupation gone, or rather, let us say he has forsaken it. Mr. J.W. Carter has been engaged to teach the district school at North Ogden. We wish him much success. He was publicly acknowledged to have gone into teaching, and then look what happens exactly 3 months after these marriages are rearranged, I think, by Brigham Young. Look what happens.
So the bishop goes on a mission too?
Yep. The bishop goes on a mission to Britain for 2 years.
What happens to his wives?
Tending the chickens, I guess, in Ogden.
Okay. I know this is something that happens over and over again, so I'm feigning surprise because we should be surprised.
Well, here's Jared. He's set apart as a missionary to the eastern states.
Well, maybe they could be traveling companions to the coast.
It could be. Could be what happened. So, Carrie continues using the stage name Miss Carrie Cogswell as of the fall theatrical season. She's listed as Mrs. Carrie Herrick, actress, residing in that neighborhood, as we just saw. Is 1 block east and 2 south of the Temple and Lion House compound, just north of the Revere House Hotel, which was on the southwest corner of First East and South 2nd, and presently the site of the Carl's Jr. fast food restaurant.
Really? So does Brigham Young end up marrying Carrie while her husband's on a mission?
That does not happen
because
at this point, Brigham is becoming quite sick. And he's hardly ever in the office. We know that because Carrie tries to contact him there. And in rapid order, only a month later, after Carrie Carter and Bishop Lester Ogden are married, they go off to their various missions. Jared is a missionary to his hometown of DeKalb, Illinois. By this time, Marianne Walker Morton has died. He's ordained by George Cannon. He returns September 24th.
So J.W. Carter, Jared is coming back from England, right? Was it England?
No, he's
the eastern coast.
DeKalb, Illinois, his hometown.
Oh, okay. I thought
that's where he's a missionary to.
Okay.
I think he's sent there for a very distinct reason. He's supposed to bring a wife back.
Who sends him? Does Brigham Young send him?
He is ordained by George Cannon. He's sent by George Cannon. He returns September 24th.
So Brigham Young is playing along with the spirits, the spirit of Joseph Smith through Mary Morton Walker.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
So John Lindsay wrote a great book called The Mormons of the Theater. I highly recommend it. And he says the following: J.W. Carter had parted company with theatrical business and accepted an engagement to preach the gospel for a while. He succeeded in making one convert that we know of, whom he brought to Utah later and made Mrs. Carter number 2. Carrie had married Herrick in March. And Jared did not marry Emma until 5 days after he and Emma returned from the mission on September 29th. So at this point, Brigham Young must have felt like he dodged a bullet, having controlled the damage of the Carters' marriage collapsing. But there were 4 matches, and we'll conclude with this sequence that soon spun beyond his control. Jared brought Emma Isidore Lind Powers back from his mission to Illinois and married her on September 29, 1873. As he continued teaching school, the two had 2 daughters together in the following year. But try as Brigham Young might to bring about a happy ending to his machinations, it was not to be. While in Illinois, Jared Carter had suffered fits of paralysis and rapidly declining health. Knowing as we do the context of the Walker letters' revelations, we're bound to wonder whether Carter thought God was punishing him for having spent his life as an actor and divorcing Carrie, even though he had sought to make amends by leaving the stage. And he died that December, leaving Emma to raise the girls alone. The second match that Brigham couldn't control, Bishop Lester Herrick and Carrie Carter. Although married to Bishop Herrick, Carrie continued on the stage. She had her own address in Salt Lake City while he was on a British mission, did not return to Ogden to live with him when he returned, and never appeared on stage as Carrie Herrick. She was always billed as Carrie Cogswell. In fact, the only token evidence of the marriage appeared in the 1874 Salt Lake City Directory, which listed Herrick, Mrs. Carrie, actress. While this was hardly a ringing endorsement of Brigham Young's matchmaking skills, Carrie clearly saw Young as her defender and benefactor until his death in 1877. This is a letter written from Carrie to Brigham Young. In the secretary's hand at the top, it says ill in house from April 17 to 26, meaning Carrie had wanted to contact him with speed, and he wasn't in the office between April 17th and 26th. In Carrie's hand, this is Salt Lake City, April 20th. Brother Brigham, dear friend, as I am down to the bedrock, meaning she's dead broke, I am going to try to play in the southern settlements. When I went up to Cache Valley last year, you gave me a letter of introduction to the bishops. Now, if you will give me one for this trip, I will be so obliged to you, for a scratch of the pen from you does a power of good. Now think favorable of this and say yes, and please send it to me through post office if it ain't too much trouble. And I will add to the obligations I already owe you. I start Friday morning, sure, as send this letter tomorrow if you can, hoping this will find you in peace. Respectfully, Sister Carrie. Respects to Brother C. We assume that's George Cannon, assistant counselor to Brigham Young in the first presidency. Brother Brigham had his hands full with Carrie Cogswell Carter Herrick. Clearly, Lester Herrick had decided that the match wasn't working, had severed ties with her after he had gotten back from his British mission. Therefore, she could not depend on the usual stipend from her husband and had to appeal to Brigham for letters of introduction to the southern settlements so she could tour and support her own 3 children. And another anecdote from John Lindsay's book illuminates Carrie's character at this time. And he writes, Miss Carrie Cogswell was playing Julia in The Hunchback to the writer's Master Walter at Ogden in 1875. There was a Gentile paper there at the time called the Ogden Freeman. It was published by a man named Freeman, who came to Ogden with the advent of the Union Pacific Railroad. Freeman had published his paper at each successive terminus of the road until it reached Ogden, and then he settled down there and ran the paper as a rabid anti-Mormon paper. We had journeyed northward, and we were in the town of Franklin, and Phil Margetts, Jimmy Thompson, and myself were seated in the hotel parlor when Carrie came in with a paper in her hand, and her lively, good-natured way said, "Boys, I met Freeman of Ogden in the co-op store just now, and he gave me a copy of his paper. He says it has a long notice of the Hunchback in it. Let us see what it says." With that, she threw herself into a chair, turned over the paper, and found the notice. It was generally favorable, but criticized her Julia rather adversely, at which she said rather petulantly, "Well, I know I'm not an Adelaide Nielsen," who was a famous actress at the time, "but I guess it was good enough for Ogden." On further examination of the paper, she came across a personal which read as follows. We understand that Miss Carrie Cogswell, now playing here with the Salt Lake Theater Company, is the 4th polygamous wife of Bishop Herrick, having herself had 3 husbands, first Thomas A. Lyne, the tragedian, second J.W. Carter, and third Bishop Herrick. She read this notice to us, and as she did, she grew very angry. She strode out of the hotel like an enraged tigress. We all wondered what she was going to do, but in about 5 minutes, she strode back in again with a handful of poor Freeman's whiskers in her clenched fist and her parasol broken to smithereens over the offender's face and head. In explanation, she said, I don't care how much he criticizes my acting, but he mustn't meddle in my family affairs.
Wow. Never read the reviews, Carrie.
Never read the reviews, Carrie. Number 3, Susie Spencer and Edward B. Marden. If you'll indulge me in a very unprofessional opinion for an historian to proffer, Ed Marden was a rather nasty piece of work. Of this third match Brigham Young could not control, John Lindsay writes, Susie Spencer was very pretty and talented. The managers found her very useful in parts where her petite stature was suited to the character, and such occasions were not infrequent. Miss Spencer was progressing nicely in her art and had already become a favorite with the patrons of the drama when she met her fate in the person of Mr. Ed Marden. Marden was one of the Cogswell party who came out of California by way of southern Utah, and waiting on Brigham Young informed him that they had received a revelation via the planchette route, instructing them to come to Salt Lake and join the Mormon church, as it was the only true and authorized church. The parties were duly baptized, confirmed into the church, and at once installed as members of the stock company. Marden became on very short acquaintance infatuated with the pretty Susie, and laid siege to her young and guileless heart with that adroitness and dexterity which come from much experience, with the result that Susie soon became a broken-hearted little woman. Marden drifted off. He was through with Utah, through with the Mormon church, and through with his little Mormon wife, and cast all of them aside as he would a worn-out suit.
So they did get
He
married.
never came back, and Susie, after a year, they did get married, yes. After a year or two of repining, found consolation in the affections of a better man. She became the wife of Mr. Rice, a well-to-do banker of the mining town of Frisco, Utah, where she lived happily in her new alliance until a few years ago when she passed away from earth, still young in years. I know that we are already long in the program, so I'm going to skip over this rather nasty exchange that Ed had with her father, Claudius Victor Spencer. He didn't let them know that he didn't let Susie's parents know that they were getting married until a time that he knew they couldn't attend. That's this letter here in 1872. And by 1875, things had gotten so bad that that Ed and Claudius were basically threatening each other's lives. And well, what happened was not fun.
Did they kill each other?
No, they didn't, because Marden took off for California with Bill Cogswell. In fact, Marden was in California when Susie gave birth to their only child, Ed Marden Jr., who only lived 6 weeks. And he was a neglectful husband during the 4 years he was married to Susie. Within 18 months, good buddies Marden and Bill Cogswell had become touring with theater companies in California without her. And when she gave birth to Edward Marden Jr. in Salt Lake City, the baby died at the age of 7 weeks, 3 days. And so he left. And that leads us to our final match that Brigham Young could not control, Bill Cogswell and Edward Marden. The fourth and final couple we'll consider, whom Brigham Young could not hope to control, is one that by their own design never came to his attention. It's unlikely that anyone in the 19th century ever thought of them in that light. A century and a half later, it is only through conjecture that I can submit them for your consideration. but a very intense professional partnership and personal friendship between actors Bill Cogswell and Ed Martin is a vital part of the story of Carter's dramatic combination, and it falls to us to consider it now.
Well, if you were suggesting, Mr. Krahenbuhl, that Bill Cogswell was gay, I can't imagine a man looking like that being gay. Can you?
Well, let's put it this way.
Martin looks gay, though.
Oh yeah, well, obviously. I actually I hesitated for many years in drawing conclusions that were not merited by the evidence. But I came to a realization that every historian that I presented this situation to, without making the slightest intimation that there was a lover's relationship going on between these men, asked me whether there was. And when I published the article about Actors Through the Desert to Brigham, I got a message from somebody who's extremely prominent in Mormon studies, and is probably the primary LGBTQ researcher of LGBTQ history. And
Gregory Prince?
No.
No.
And what the researcher asked me was Bill Cogswell a friend of Dorothy? So there's certainly a whole lot of evidence around that. Where Martin was a pathological liar who simply did not care whom he hurt, Cogswell was more of a fabulist, embellishing and conflating kernels of truth into tall tales. And case in point was his service in the Union Army during the Civil War. Cogswell's obituary in 1906 stated unequivocally that he had served all 4 years of the conflict with distinction. This turns out to be demonstrably untrue. His service records available to us now indicate that he served from his enlistment in the company for only a matter of weeks before being sidelined by a back injury at Fredericksburg and convalesced at the military hospital set up in Trinity Chapel in Washington, D.C. Upon his release, he took up acting again and joined the company at Ford's Theater. He wasn't there on the night, but he was a member of that company before the assassination.
More soldiers in the Civil War wish they had thought of that. They're in the middle of a battle and they go, "Oh, my back,
my aching, my sciatica." I have a good deal, having sciatica now myself and a hip replacement. I'm a good deal more
sympathetic,
empathetic with Bill in that regard.
So who the hell was Dorothy? There hasn't been a Dorothy mention, has there? Dorothy Gale?
Yes.
Surrender Dorothy?
Yes. RFM, when two actors love each other very much, but we'll go into it later.
They make little baby actors.
Oh, it could be. In an interesting bit of synchronicity, at the same time that Cogswell was recovering in a military hospital, so was Martin in Frederick, Maryland, some 80 miles away. Not presently known whether they knew each other that early, but it certainly gave them a common experience upon which to build a friendship. And another part of Cogswell's obituary that turns out to be untrue is the insistence that he never married, as the piece was written by either Cogswell for later publication or by his nephew, Lincoln J. Carter, who had turned 5 years old in the desert during the Carter's Spirit Guides trip. It's most curious to discover that Cogswell had indeed been married briefly to a fellow actress named Etta for a handful of years in the mid-1880s. Martin, on the other hand, had been married.
Yes.
A lot. Oh. Susie Spencer had not been his first conquest, though she bore him his only children. Martin had reportedly left a wife in San Francisco before coming to Utah, and after deserting her, then Susie, he repeated the pattern in Minneapolis and in Chicago. At the time of his death in 1892, Martin had only recently married yet again. In
Wow.
fact, it appears that the relationship of the longest duration shared by either E.B. Martin or W.J. Cogswell was with each other. It was not simply that they spent a lot of time together while acting in Carter's dramatic combination between 1869 and 1872. When that company was handed over to Carey and Martin married Susie Spencer, he and Cogswell immediately set out together on tours to theaters in Nevada and California. On one occasion, they even acted as seconds for two fellow actors who challenged one another to a duel on the banks of the Sacramento River. When Cogswell and Martin both fled Utah for the Midwest, wasn't the last time they were together either. Their names are found in the same companies in Chicago into the 1880s. All of this is documented in newspaper accounts, but the one I find by far the most interesting is this one from 1890, which is striking in its vivid depiction of the relationship between the two men. And we'll close with this along the circumstances of the memory. When a fellow scholar who was active, let's see, I've already told that story. So dedicated were Cogswell and Martin to the social illusion of their heterosexuality that they made a public show of Cogswell pining away for Lotta Crabtree, who was the most famous actress of that era and was an actress he actually had worked with back in the 1860s. But in this particular newspaper item in which Martin and Cogswell are called confidants, in particular chums, Martin tells the reporter, "Oh, Bill, he's pining away for Lotta, who's in the train. The two trains were stopped together. He's pining away for Lotta. He's never gotten over her. She was his one true love." Making Lotta Cogswell's beard in absentia, as it were, just as Martin did the same through his own marriage to Susie Martin.
He was
The card-
pining for the fjords.
Pining for the fjords?
These guys were PFFs. They were particular friends forever.
That is true. And he's not pining, he's passed on. The
That's a
Carters,
dead
the
parrot.
Martins, the Herricks, and the Cogswell, yes, he's a late parrot, partnership each have their own elements of the good, the bad, and the ugly, but there's one among them that my mind cannot adequately grasp. And it's the secret I think Bill Cogswell kept for 35 years, from the moment in 1871 that he and Martin convinced the Carters that the spirit guides were talking to them, to the moment of his death in 1906. It is less about his probable closeting as a gay man, although that is human suffering enough, and more about his starting a lie with Martin that he was unable to control until the company arrived at Salt Lake City, and they had a pretext to stop the messages. But Cogswell's and Martin's spiritualist parlor trick had convinced Jared Carter that the communications were real. And when the Carters' marriage blew up over the Walker letter, only weeks later, Cogswell may have felt that the sufferings of his sister and brother-in-law were all his fault. He may have thought to repair things by being a witness to the summit meetings with Brigham Young in 1872, but instead, Young's Napoleonic matchmaking only made things worse. John Lindsay points out in his book, The Mormons in the Theater, that Cogswell began drinking heavily in 1872 and became unreliable during this time. If my guesses about Cogswell's and Martin's collusion are correct, it is small wonder that he did. For the rest of his life, Bill Cogswell bore the burden of a terrible secret. What he had meant as a harmless prank had destroyed the lives of the family to whom he was closest. Jared Carter, the brother-in-law Cogswell idolized, died in 1874, and that was bad enough. But the other two casualties of Cogswell's mischief ended up supporting him at the end of his life. He was living in Carey's household, the sister he adored, in 1872, when a tax assessor took its census. His nephew, Lincoln Carter, who became the most successful producer of melodrama in the world after Carey's death in 1895, employed Uncle Bill Cogswell as an actor and touring company manager until mere months before Cogswell's death at age 70. Bill's worldly possessions were shipped to Lincoln's Criterion Theater in Chicago, and Cogswell was buried in the Veterans Graveyard in Milwaukee. We have no evidence that Cogswell ever confessed to either of them that the spirit guides were of his and Martin's making. And as we leave this story, the real human tragedies that pervade Brigham Young's matchmaking to the stars are still playing themselves out in the family narratives that we discuss in articles and conferences and podcasts such as this. And I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk about them with you.
Thank you so much, Lee. Wow, that Bill Cogswell. It's all fun and games until some crazy lady in Illinois writes a letter saying Joseph wants you to go on a mission.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Hey, Bill,
Yes, sir.
what did you think?
When you were joking about the silhouette, you said that guy doesn't look gay at all, and you talked about Martin looking gay, which was just a silhouette.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
I went looking for a silhouette we used to use of you, RFM, and I was gonna make a
That
joke.
looks like me. That's exactly my head
Oh
shape.
my.
But this is what we used to represent RFM back when he really was
Anonymous.
anonymous. I was trying to come up with a better word than that. When we were keeping him entirely a secret. So there's that. But interesting story. Lots of historical documents, connecting dots on things that nobody else would have ever, I think, gotten around to putting out there. So I think it's fascinating. I think Mormon history, I tell people this all the time, that you can be mad at it, you can be hurt by it, but you can't deny that in just a few hundred years, it has the most fascinating history of any religion out there. I'm quite impressed with how much cool stuff happens in Mormonism.
Do you want to give our listeners a chance to say hi to Lee and ask him a question?
I did put the link in the chat. No one's showed up in the studio yet, but I'll put it in there one more time. This is the link, folks. It is going in the live chat now. If you want to come into the studio and say hi to Lee, ask a question, make a comment about the presentation tonight. I just want to say, this is a side note. This got nothing to do with the data. You do a really good job of putting slideshows together and all of the moving parts and pieces, and it's very fascinating.
Thank you.
It helps keep the entertainment going too. If at some points the data sort of becomes a little dry in moments, the fascinating slideshow going back and forth is really fun too. So anyway, great job tonight, Lee.
It's good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers, Lee.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I'm about the lack of people in the chat. I never got picked for the basketball team either. So
Yeah, well, it happens. This happens from time to time. I'll think the episode has plenty of interesting data points, but it's a little complex. And you laid it out so well that I don't know that there's a question to be asked. But
What would you ask? I don't know.
yeah, I think you went through every point that can be made. So
okay.
And I've been trying to ask questions as we go along, but
thank you for that. At several points, things that I would not have thought about. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. So everybody knows. Well, should I give it away? I'll give it away. Yeah, it was 2.5 years ago. I went back and I listened to the whole thing. Today, making notes and everything, seeing who's related to, because a lot of people that were in this podcast tonight were featured in that podcast then. Jared Carter, senior and junior. That's how I knew the date that little Lincoln was born, April 15th, 1865, when
That's right.
Lincoln was assassinated.
Yeah.
Yeah. My dad used to say to my mom, or about her, sometimes in her presence, if he was feeling particularly reckless, say about his wife, my mom, that she was born the day before Columbus discovered America. And she didn't like that. Okay, she's born. It was the 11th, right? Yeah, the 11th of October. That was her birth. Anyway, it's one or the other. Okay, so I think it's October 11th. That's the day before Columbus Day, if I'm correct.
Yeah,
but it always led into, because he'd always said that about her, he would have to say about himself. But I'm so old. I was born the day after Jesus. That one I can remember because his birthday was December 26th.
Yeah.
1919.
Yeah. There was a joke I was relating to RFM that Lincoln Carter related, because he was named after the assassinated president, because he was born on April 15th, 1865, and Carrie, his mother, told him, "When you were born, the nation mourned."
Yes.
Mm.
That's what it made me think of. That's what I was linking it back to.
Exactly.
Exactly that kind of comment. That's kind of funny.
Um,
Show people.
so one question I have, lots of interesting little twists and turns. What was the most interesting part of all of these connections in tonight's episode for you, Lee, as you went through all of this and you're capturing documents and trying to figure out how this story sort of winds its way around? What was the thing that you thought, like, man, that's just the neatest little data point?
The two moments that just knocked me backwards and told me that this was worth pursuing. First of all, was the discovery of the hotel listings, and I just could not keep these people straight. And why on earth would this couple, who were passionately in love with one another, why would they get to Salt Lake City, and then why would they convert to Mormonism? Why would they break up, and why would Carrie, who was so fiercely independent, why would she become the fourth polygamous wife of a bishop?
Right.
And
The converting
and
to Mormonism part is easier for me because that's how they get the gig.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, if they were going to be true opportunists, that's where it would have stopped. But they were, and there will be a book about um, Carter's dramatic combination. When I'm able to lay everything out, it will become apparent that the thing that happened, that has all of these people coming together and staying in the same hotel, clearly something is being orchestrated. And when I found all of those articles, it hit me in the face. Something is happening, that these people are talking together.
And you figure
This
it's
is a,
Brigham
this
or
is a,
George Q. Kennedy at his direction.
exactly. Um, the second thing was the discovery of the letter. The letter from M.A. Walker to Jared Carter.
Yeah.
It's worth noting that the Walker letter was originally um, said to have been sent to Jared Carter Sr., with Jared Carter Sr.'s dates. The problem with that, and you can see why the mistake was made. First of all, Jared Carter Sr. is in the Doctrine and Covenants. He's mentioned several times. And no one, if you go in the Joseph Smith papers, or in any of the biographical data, you see there's really confusion about when he left the church and under what conditions that he left the church. And at least now, when I first started researching him, there was no sense that there was any realization when he died. Well, he died in 1849, but there's no year on the letter. So there was nothing to tie that to. But you had to know that Jared Carter Jr. was an actor, so that the poem in the middle of the letter made sense. You had to know that he was from DeKalb, Illinois, because that's where she was living at the time, and he and she knew each other. She was expecting him to be back in DeKalb that summer, and not as an actor in Salt Lake City. And it also casts light on the fact that this was not his first rodeo with spiritualism. The voices were just the thing that pushed him over the edge, out of
Mhm.
skepticism about it,
Yeah.
into full-fledged belief.
Yeah, just
So
like I'm sure he'd already had a lot of doubts about his immortality and where he's going to be spending eternity being an actor on the wicked stage
right.
when he got that little notice from our friend Mary M.A. Walker.
Yeah.
Marianne?
Marianne Morton Walker.
Marianne.
Marianne.
Now,
Hey,
what I
Marianne.
want to know is for your future
Yes.
paper, What was the relationship between Emma Lind, with
Uh-huh.
an E on the end, that Jared Carter came back from DeKalb with and was going to marry in Salt
Mhm.
Lake City? What's the relationship between Emma Lind and Mary Ann Morton? That's my question. Because Brigham may
I
not have been the only matchmaker.
Yes, and so Walker dies in 1873. That's when Jared comes back and does his mission. What I need to do is go to DeKalb and
Oh,
find.
so she's passed away by the time he gets there?
Yes, yeah,
Okay, so she's not around to direct anything
she's
or
not
direct his
around, but
attention to.
it would not surprise me in the least to discover that Emma was a member of that congregation, and that I mean, she must be somebody that he already knew.
You would think so, but if she's a reorganite, what's she doing going to Salt Lake City?
Jared was apparently a very handsome man. I have I have not yet found a picture of him, but I'm sure they're out there because there was a picture of Carrie, and there's
Mhm.
probably one in archives in Denver or even in Illinois. They just haven't been digitized yet. It's very I've been very fortunate in that I have been doing this work for so long that I can often find new things that have been freshly digitized
Mm,
and then add another puzzle piece. Um, and that's a research trip that needs to happen.
So maybe Jared flirted to convert.
Yeah, flirt to convert. That's what you got to do.
How do you know that?
I don't. I just took it from you.
Talking about flirting to
It's a
convert.
Mormon thing,
It's a Mormon.
as far as I know.
Talk
Oh,
about
goodness.
flirting to convert. Andrew wants to share a few thoughts with you. Lee, by the way, Andrew, I can tell you're a morning shaver. You get that stuff in the morning, huh?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Well, and like I trim. This is the part I trim. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Andrew. How you
Should have
doing,
Hey
man?
there.
Should have seen you at 9 a.m. this morning. It looked good, huh? You had it all off. It was a smooth fade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. I can't grow hair that fast.
Yeah. That's that. Yeah. That's why you're so jealous.
That's it. It's true. I am jealous.
It's like closing. It looks like closing time at the Bedrock Gravel Pit.
Yeah. It's been a long night with my son. My son's got special needs. I wasn't able to tune in to all
I'm
of
sorry,
this,
Andrew.
but
Bill, how do you feel about making fun of Andrew now?
I wasn't making fun of Andrew. Andrew grows
no,
hair.
I didn't.
Like,
I didn't
He
take
grows
it as
hair
such.
quick. I mean, you can tell it's short, but he definitely grows it a lot faster and thicker than I could grow it. So I
Pay
wasn't.
no attention to Bill. He's always that way, Andrew. Just go ahead.
Yeah.
You
No,
were making fun of him.
But here's what I wanted to say about tonight. The stories about Brigham Young and the way he acted as exceptions to the rules. Like, you're not supposed to do this stuff. You're not supposed to be going behind people's backs like this, with these, backroom negotiations and conspiracies like this. What that reminded me of was this is a book I've been looking at. It's hard, and it has some really mind-blowing, interesting claims about um, psychology and our relationship to power. Okay. Did you get this? This is the Cambridge introduction to Jacques Lacan.
Okay.
Jacques Lacan was a psychoanalyst.
I'm guessing he was French.
Yep, he's French. Yeah.
There we
His
go.
work gets used in ways that
I've never heard of it.
are often critiques of patriarchal power. And he borrows something from Freud about the phallus, because Freud is kind of funny because he's the penis envy guy. You know,
Yeah, it's
he's
like you said to Freud, hey, Sigmund, sometimes a banana is just a
yeah,
banana.
yeah. For Lacan, the phallus becomes the symbol of power that's just bestowed upon a person by virtue of how they're born. So for the Mormon Church, it's the priesthood power, and Brigham Young is the authority over that.
Hmm.
The trick with that is that what that means is it's always a fake authority. It's never an actual authority that is granted by an all-powerful God. So it always has to hide itself. And he has a metaphor about like priesthood authority is kind of like a toupee in a windy like in a really on a really windy day. It's like a
Huh.
toupee that's just about to fly off. Like what that means is that Brigham Young's fake authority is just about to be revealed. It
Hmm.
gets so close to being revealed as being fake and based off of uh, having himself be an exception to the rules. So, is that making sense, guys?
Yeah, as I
Yes.
understand what you're saying it's a fake phallus that always has to hide itself.
Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah, and it always functions as an exception to the rules as well.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
it's kind of like the same as the idea of lying for the Lord. You're supposed to not lie, but it's for the when you're lying for the church, you're doing it on behalf of God, and
Hmm.
God's the one that grants this all. So it's okay if we're doing it on his behalf.
Hmm.
Yes, I never lie, but when I do, it's for the Lord.
Yes, uh-huh. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
was
just kind of that facade
sure.
that patriarchal power bestows. So that's what I've been getting into, and I appreciated this like super thorough analysis about the history behind these encounters. That was a big long list of people, a really intricate narrative. So I
Hmm.
appreciate your work on that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks so much for calling in.
Yeah, sure thing.
You
And
hang in
thanks for
there,
turning
okay?
us on to Lacan. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh, if yes, I could talk more. I I can call back another time too because I'm starting to feel like there's a lot of applicability.
Hmm.
It's some really the ideas are really obscure. He's writing in the 1950s and 1960s.
Hmm.
So that's the French tradition of structuralism and post-structuralism, and a lot of the uh, like the weird Marxist and post-Marxist
Yeah, that's what I was
theories.
just thinking.
So yeah, uh-huh.
Structuralism.
Yeah. um,
Very good.
yeah. So, and I've been using also this book. This is Grammar of Motives by Kenneth Burke. This is really good rhetorical analysis for how to break down narratives.
Wonderful.
So,
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Andrew, thank you so much for calling in. I
yeah, sure
appreciate it.
thing. Thank
Okay.
you.
You hang in there.
Take,
Thanks, Andrew.
yeah, take care, guys.
Take
Bye
care.
bye. So, everybody, so was that guy's name Lacan?
Lacan.
Lacan. Hmm.
So, you know what Admiral James T. Kirk said about that French philosopher? Lacan.
Oh, that wasn't even a fair ambush.
Oh my gosh. That's exactly what he said about that French
Lacan.
philosopher.
Le is the in Spanish, and French and Spanish are connected. So Lacan would be the con. So there it
He
is.
said, you've managed to kill practically everyone else, but like a poor marksman, you keep missing the target.
Main power to the thrusters, Captain. I'll give her all she's got.
Ah, I tried shoving a wiener in the warp drive, Captain, but it did not do a bit of good.
Well, that's that. So
We're out of here.
All right, gentlemen.
Good
Thank
thing
you
Andrew
so
called
much.
in. Otherwise, we would have had no one.
Oh my.
Lee, thank you so much for joining us again tonight. It's always
Thank you,
wonderful.
gentlemen.
You're a scholar and a gentleman.
Well, thank you.
And we will leave you now. Remember this Friday. First off, remember tomorrow, have a special celebration. Maybe a cupcake with a little candle on it in honor of the 9th anniversary of
Great.
the first RFM episode. You could do that.
Yeah.
And but Friday, join us here for Mormonism After Dark, 8:00 p.m. Mountain Time.
we have a special guest. It will be a regular call into the show who will be part of Mormonism After Dark at 8 p.m.
Are they going to be on the whole time?
I think they'll be on the whole time.
What if they're no good?
They're just going to join in the conversation with us.
You could just accidentally dump them.
I would never accidentally dump anyone.
Bill, I know, because it's always planned. I knew it. It was just an act. Everybody, thanks so much for joining us here.
All
Thanks
right.
again, Lee. Thanks, Bill. Thank you, Andrew. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next time on Mormonism Live. Good night,
night.
everybody.